here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the musician Richard Dudanski, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about groovy things, including life, love and poetry. He has been in lots of different bands, including the 101ers, the Raincoats, Public Image Limited, and also wrote a book a few years, if not decades ago, which is titled Squat City Rocks, Proto-Punk and Beyond, a musical memoir from the margins, available from all good bookshops, and mostly online, in fact. Anyway, you're going to find out more about that and lots more from Richard. So, look, after several minutes of interesting but slightly casual chat, my God, it was casual, we got down to that exciting subject that was the early formative years. Richard, it's over to you.
I did. I mean, it wasn't a strike of lightning on the way to Damascus or anything. But I grew up. I was born in 1952. So when my sister, I was 10. My elder sister, started buying the Beatles singles as they came out. So we had, in terms of pop music, I should just say that, in fact, my father was a big classical music fan, and he always let us play his music and encouraged us to buy records. So in terms of classical music, I used to love listening to, and he loved, amazing 20th century Debussy. Bartok was one of his favorites. So all this music I was listening to. But then in terms of pop music, so my sister would have, Love Lovely Me Do, She Loves You, I Want to Hold Your Hand. But in fact, as a 10 or 11-year-old, this was a bit soppy. We used to, like me and my brother, who I have a brother who's a bit younger than me, we thought it was a bit kind of soppy music. And also it was being bought by my sister, so you can imagine.
Yes.
So in fact, the first music I started buying was the Shadows. I love the Shadows. That we're talking about Kon-Tiki, Apache, all those, the first songs. So, that was my first music. And then that quickly developed into, I think I was actually very lucky because, when the early Stones, the Animals, Spencer Davis group, all those great British R&B bands of the early, mid-60s. So, that was when I really started, enjoying pop music.
And with that classical music, did you like people like, there was a guy called Aaron Copland, who was one of those kind of quite contemporary American writers and conductors and composers who sort of did various kind of, he was born 1900s. Did that sort of come onto your radar? I think he did some quite famous little pieces, which was one of his favourites, was about was it New World or something, which was a kind of a lovely piece of music, quite relaxing and enjoyable.
I can't remember that. I do, Aaron Copland was definitely there. But I bought one of his albums, I can't remember which now, but one of his pieces of music. But as I say, this was my father who was buying, who was getting hold of this classical music, which was mostly 20th century.
Yes.
But Copland not particularly, but as I said, Bartok, Stravinsky were his favourites, Debussy.
What about the Planets?
Holst.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a copy of The Planets by Holst. Yeah,
I think we all had a bit of a fondness for that album, didn't we? Really. Yeah. So when you got to so you were born 52. So like by the mid 60s, you would have been almost leaving school at that age. Were you sort of leaving at 15, or were you going on to do O levels and A levels?
I actually did O levels and A levels. I actually went to university and studied zoology at university.
Blimey, so you were one of those kind of slightly, not rare, but that was quite different because most people were leaving school at quite an early age. What was your first concert that you went to?
First concert was Gino Washington and the Ram Jam Band. In 1967. So Yeah,
Yes.
fantastic. I always loved him. I actually supported them later when I was with the One-on-Oneers. And so
Yeah.
that was rather good, being able to reminisce with Gina about, he remembered the gig.
Did he?
Yeah.
I saw him once in South London and once in Norwich.
Yeah.
We were sort of, yes, no, twice in Norwich actually. He was a firm favourite because he just sort of did all the soul classics with his great cheeky smile and a brilliant band, and yeah, that was quite something. And were you getting kind of excited by the kind of the change in the '60s kind of sound with psychedelia and people like Hendrix or Jefferson Airplane or the Doors? Did that come into your consciousness during that period?
It did, but a bit later. Because I was, as I said, I was into the British R&B stuff, and then that morphed with my interest in girls and discotheques into Tamla and soul, Atlantic, all the great Black American soul, and of course ska.
Yes, absolutely. So you
that
were on.
that was my favourite until, I suppose, what we're talking. I suppose the early '70s, when I went, when friends were, the more psychedelic stuff. Although also in that period, in the late '60s, Cream was a favourite band, and Jimi Hendrix, of course. Yeah.
Yes. Did you get to after Gino? Did you were you quite a regular on the live circuit, going to see gigs at this stage?
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
Were you a very studious young person then?
Well, I was not particularly. I mean, I never particularly enjoyed studying, but I always had an interest in zoology and biology, so it was quite natural history. So it was quite easy for me to study.
Where did you do your degree?
A place called Chelsea College in London, in the King's Road.
Right, there you go. That took you into almost, was that 74 then you came out with a degree?
That's right. It was in '74. Yeah.
Right. When did a musical instrument sort of appear in your life?
Well, it was then. I mean, this is when, I'd finished doing my, this is all because of the squat land that I'd been introduced with by my brother. In '73, I moved into a squat in Waterton Road, which was 101 Waterton Road, which was the 101ers. And while there, actually, the first instrument I bought was a clarinet, because I've always loved the clarinet. So I bought a clarinet down Portobello Road and started learning, by ear a few songs. And then I had a pair of bongos, and there happened to be a drum kit in the house. So I would go down and just play on my own, knock about, 3 or 4 times, I suppose. And someone heard me playing and said if I wanted to stand in as it's a bit long, the story, but I mean, basically, the drummer who'd started what was to be the 101 was a Chilean guy called Antonio, a friend of mine, had gone away. And while he was away, this fledgling group of 101ers were offered a first gig down in Brixton, down in the Telegraph in Brixton.
Yes.
It was actually for a Chilean benefit for there were a lot of Chileans over because of the Pinochet business. And so we were offered this gig and they needed a drummer. So someone said, do you want to try doing it? We got a gig in 2 weeks. So I said, okay, I'll try. And they said, yeah, you can do it. So I sat in fact, it was a week later with the gig. They brought the gig forward a week. So I had a week together to get together the chops for, half a dozen songs.
Amazing.
That's how I started playing with other people, and from then on, it was like a non-stop.
And with that squat scene, were you sort of introduced to a whole new world that you had never sort of been part of? Like, I don't know, people like Hawkwind and sort of free festivals at Windsor. Did that sort of all sort of come together quite quickly at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was at the free festival at Windsor, which was in '74. I think the one I was at anyway. Hawkwind, yeah, we knew Hawkwind and knew Lemmy quite. He was one of the local guys.
Yes. Well, he'd been in the Rockin' Vickers, hadn't he? And then Hawkwind for that period, and then obviously Motorhead a few years later. Oh, so you were sort of all part of that. And I think I did an interview a few years ago with a guy called Tymon Dogg at that
Tymon
stage.
Dogg, I'm playing with Tymon now. Yeah.
Oh, you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a band together. Well, I played with Tymon back in the day, back in '74, in the 101ers, because of course he taught Joe how to play the guitar.
Yes.
And so when the 101ers split, I didn't go with the Clash, but I formed a band with Tymon called Tymon Dogg and the Fools, because we knew we weren't playing the right commercial line of things in '77. And then we had another band in the '80s, and now we've got another band together with people from Granada. There's a very good rock band called Lagartija Nick in Granada with some really good guys, bass player, keyboards and guitar. And so Tymon and me play with them. We've just done an album, actually, that came out last May.
Right. Was that with, oh God, what label are you on, or what label's he on now?
What's it called? What's the label?
Is it Global or something?
Hang on, I should know this. I've got 1,000 CDs and vinyl.
Yes, I think I've got a copy of it here actually as well. So this is quality chat, isn't it?
Yes. I could go and have a look at the album.
No, I can get it here.
Tiny Global, is it?
That's the one. Yes, Tiny Global. That's when I did an interview with him, wasn't it? Tiny Global. So how long did you last with the 101ers?
From the beginning till the end, which was September 74 till May 76.
Right. So you were there. So you were on the albums Keys to Your Heart, Sweet Revenge.
Well, those were singles, not albums. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they were there. So yeah, so during that period then, did you feel like you were on sort of some sort of cultural zeitgeist at this stage? Did you feel like you were on a mission?
I've never felt like I'm on a mission, but I certainly was enjoying myself and meant a lot to me, the band. Yeah.
Yes. And then as that sort of squat, did you become quite political at that stage as well?
I mean, I think it was political in itself. The simple act of squatting, brought you to a certain consciousness of, where you were in terms of the power in the land and one's opposition to it, to many aspects of it. I think just squatting was a political action, yeah.
Yes, and with that kind of community, though, there was a lot of people that went on to form bands like the Passions, the Derelicts, and then you went in to work with the Raincoats and Basement 5. So it does seem like quite a incredible, fertile period for sort of creativity and making music.
Well, I think it definitely was, yeah. I mean, and a lot, I think, had to do with the fact that, if you're living in a squat, it gives you a place where you can make noise, so you can have a rehearsal room in the basement. You don't have to worry too much about where money's coming from. You could get, a part-time job for a bit of money, but obviously, you didn't have to pay the rent, so that helped in that respect as well. So it was it was a very creative kind of atmosphere. A lot of people doing different things, not just music.
Yes, and at that stage, how was the kind of creative process of the band? Did it, writing material and sort of, recording?
Yeah, well, pretty quickly, Joe Strummer, who was Woody at the time, became the main songwriting force in the band. So he'd come to the rehearsal. Well, no, first of all, he'd usually bring an idea for a melody and the words, and he'd work on it with the guitar player, who was Clive, who later joined the Passions, Clive Timperley.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they kind of knock it, as a kind of a broad idea for a song, which would then come into the rehearsal room, and we'd, knock it about and put it into a kind of a structure. And so that was the creative process, which was always a part that I very much enjoyed. Actually.
Yes. And were the bands like Dr. Feelgood and Richard Strange and the Doctors of Madness, were they also sort of part of that scene that you were sort of circulating?
Well, Dr. Feelgood certainly were. I mean, they're an inspiration for the start of that. I think if any band was and any one person, Dr. Feelgood, Wilco, Johnson, vintage. I mean, we'd see them, the pub at the end of the street. So when you've got Wilco Johnson like 2 yards from you, and of course Lee Briller, the singer.
Yes.
Great band to see live in a small pub,
And did the 101ers play outside London much?
Yeah. We played a lot outside London. We always seemed to be getting into a van and going somewhere.
Did you kind of get frustrated not sort of being able to quite crack a kind of a sound that sort of went on to albums and sort of more releases?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was because the band finished precisely when our first single came out. Okay, it was on an independent label, Chiswick. Keys to Your Heart was the song. But just as it came out, Joe was converted to the idea of a punk band, and we had problems in the band of working by this time. So
right.
So the writing was kind of on the wall for the 101ers. So it kind of broke up. I think just as we were just maybe getting to the point of getting an interest maybe from someone to record an LP or whatever. Yeah, but yes. Who knows? We'll never know. Yeah, it's
the great mystery. And then what do you do when you realise that chapter has sort of swiftly closed? Do you sort of still look for another band, or did you have a period outside of music at this stage?
Well, yeah, 3 months outside music. I went with my girlfriend. Esperanza, a Spanish girl who I'd met in '74 as well. We went to Sicily because we had friends in Italy. We went down there and we were in Sicily for 3 months, but soon started getting itchy to start playing again. So we came back to London at the end of '76, and that's when I teamed up with Tymon Dogg actually in this band Tymon Dogg and the Fools.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you find it quite tricky finding a sort of a sound and a look and a sort of to be part of that, I suppose, the punk scene that was started to begin at that point? Because Tymon Dogg brought an album out in '76, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. What was the name of it? I know it was on Outlaw Records. I can remember that because he financed it from money he got from the London Transport Police for having been assaulted by a London Transport policeman while he was busking. Anyway, Outlaw 1 was the album, and that was the label, his label.
Yes.
Yeah, your question. Most definitely. I mean, at that point, beginning of '77, really, it was mostly hard, fast guitar bands with a bit of the image was very punk, lot of leather around, etc., etc. And in fact, that's why we called ourselves Tymon Dogg and the Fools, because we realized that by playing, kind of music with a violin and not being too worried about how we looked, certainly not going into dressing up like a punk when you didn't feel like you wanted to dress that way, was enough for us to call ourselves the Fools and maybe live up to our name, because we didn't get very far after about a year.
Yes, it's always quite tricky, isn't it? It's kind of a strange period because my brother, who's 7 years older than me, he was very much into the prog world. So he'd sort of was a student, in that time. So it was all sort of the classic, Genesis and Yes and all those bands. But then you had, the singer-songwriters come over. Then you had the birth of disco. Did your playing style change much during this period?
Well, it's changed all through my life, depending very much who I'm playing with. As a drummer, you adapt or you go towards the music that you're playing. So with Tymon. I loved playing with Tymon. It was a big change from the 101ers because it had a more kind of jazzy feel to it. Tymon playing usually his violin.
Yes.
And then after that, many different bands, because I think I played with the Raincoats at that point for a time. I also had a band called Bank of Dresden, which was a band that we got together. Actually, that was more of a straight kind of rock band. And then Public Image, of course, which was quite an interesting band for me because, again, they were very free in terms of their rhythmic.
Yes.
And what they wanted to do rhythmically, at least when I was with them.
So when did you join them in? Was that 78?
79. Yeah.
79. And what was the atmosphere like in the band and joining a band that had so much kind of history to various members?
Well, I mean, it was to start with, especially. I mean, I joined them when they were just starting to record Metal Box. And so they were in the studio without a drummer, and Keith rang up, and Keith Levine. And I went around, and it was fantastic. I loved it because I loved playing with Wobble, and it was basically just me and Wobble would just either I'd start a rhythmic pattern and he'd link onto it, or he'd start a bass line and I'd link up to that. And we'd just be jamming around, and usually Keith, who was the main guy on the mixing desk, would say, "Oh yeah, keep that one going," something like that. And so we'd record a backing track. That's how it was done. All of the tracks that I played on were done like that on Metal Box. And,
yes.
So that was a very free time, and it was fantastic. I was thrilled also because it was John was very much against the idea of the punk image idea, which, it's quite difficult. It's a long story, but I mean, what you're talking about, Malcolm McLaren and Bernie Rose. I mean, the reason I didn't go with Joe to what was to be the Clash in 76 was because I just could not stand the manager who tried to persuade me that, that was the best, this is where music was going. And so the idea of the managers with complete control was anathema to me, especially coming from the 101ers, yeah?
Yes.
Where we were our own bosses, we did exactly what we want. Our manager was our friend. And suddenly there was a guy there who said, "Oh no, you've got to write about this, you've got to dress like this. This is what we're going to do." So, anyway, so that was my reason for not actually joining the Clash. Well, it wasn't the Clash then, it was the beginning of
yes, absolutely. It must have been against all the free-thinking ideals that you were consuming. And at that stage, were you also exploring sort of philosophical kind of ideas that a lot of people were doing in the sort of 70s, like Carlos Castaneda and sort of the work of Jack Kerouac or Ginsberg? People started to go to that other world of, ley lines and the view of Atlantis. Did those kind of...
I think you brought in a lot of names that are quite disparate, actually. I wouldn't put Jack Kerouac in with ley lines. I mean, I mean, the Beat generation was what partly was really interesting.
Yes,
part of a counterculture. But I think
I was going to say that was kind of... I know they probably would all hate each other, but I think people a few years, decades later, started to not worry too much that Jack Kerouac would have hated the hippie movement and found it really upsetting that Neil Cassidy sort of joined the was it who did One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? He got on the road into the bus, and I don't think Jack Kerouac was particularly excited by seeing Neil disappear behind the wheel with this rainbow bus, playing psychedelic music. But then years later, it seemed like a lot of people picked all those things together and put them in their back pocket.
Yeah, well, maybe so a bit later. I think at the time, I mean, I personally, I come from a Catholic upbringing. I was brought up by Catholic priests, and I rejected totally the whole idea of dogma, which again has something maybe to do with my rejection of the punk ethos, which is what it became, in terms of following kind of a set way of thinking. And not the idea of punk being a do-it-yourself movement, which was fantastic, which was very much part of where, the 101ers and the whole squatting movement came from. But there was another side to the punk, which, I just really didn't go with. I remember I talk about it in my book. I went, some friends when I was at university in my first year, so this is 71 or something, going to see, he was some Indian guru, I think Maharaji, possibly.
Brilliant. Yes, it could have been.
I went to see him, and I found it turned my stomach to see all these people going, I hated it. Oh my God, this is what I'd kind of rejected, and I don't want anything to do. So I was very anti this whole, if you call that hippie philosophy.
Yes, I think a lot of people there was another one, the orange people who had a lot of orange robes. I have friends who are a bit older than me, and they'd gone through, you felt a little bit like you needed to have a guru to sort of fit in a bit, but sometimes thought, actually, I'm not really a guru type of person. But a lot of people were getting into those, wanting to live in community. I mean, you lived in squat, but I know a lot of people were rejecting the cities to go into the countryside and setting up their like communes. And then there was little fairs and festivals around East Anglia and down in Devon. And again, there was that kind of earth energy and earth magic that people really started to get into in the mid-70s and onwards. And then there was the Cranks cookbook and Whole Foods, and all those things came together, and that's why I put On the Road in there as well, because often that was one of the books that people would recommend alongside Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It was people were quite liberal with their cultural appropriation, weren't they?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they were. I was just talking about it from my own perspective in terms of spirituality, if you like. But gurus were definitely not my.
And what was it? And what was it like squatting as the decade progressed? And you were in Public Image in '79. That was the year, obviously, Thatcher gets in, and the next decade is very different. What was it like squatting in that period? Were you still?
We didn't just carry on. Eventually you realise you move through a few squats. And I mean, in our case, we formed a housing co-op in a cul-de-sac in just off Westbourne Grove in West London. We were so lucky. Well, the fact that we actually squatted in a basement, and but ended up with other houses in the end of this cul-de-sac, making a housing co-op and getting funding from the government to do them up and stay there and live there at a reasonable rent. I mean, a very cheap rent for living in a West 2 address,
Yes.
So that's how, and that's where I lived all through the 80s until I came out to Spain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were lucky in that sense. Yeah.
So how long did it last with Public Image? Were you there for
6 months? 6
how
months.
many? 6 months.
Yeah.
Did you play any live shows with the band?
Did a couple. Yeah, I mean, that was one of my bones of contention. Well, it was the main bone of contention, actually, because mostly because of Keith, who was, he had kind of quite severe drug issues. He couldn't, he just didn't want to do any live gigs. Actually, Wobble and myself wanted to. I think John would have done as well. But we did one that wasn't supposed to be a gig. We went up to do a television gig, a television appearance for a Granada Television in Manchester, and ended up being able to play in the Russell Club. Someone organised the gig that very night, and the Grapevine filled it up, which was fantastic. So that was the only proper gig I suppose I did with them. That was great fun.
Yes.
And then we did a gig. We did some more television stuff, but they're not gigs. And the only other gig was the last gig, after which was when I left, which was in Leeds, a sci-fi festival. It was incredibly badly organised, and anyway, yeah. After that gig, it was kind of.
It was the end. Oh, what a shame! God, that was so. It's just the.
It was a shame in a way because for me it was I was saying a bit earlier, and we didn't carry on with this thread. But Pill for me was fantastic because they didn't have a manager; they made the decisions themselves. Maybe that was the main reason for their downfall, with the ironies of life. But but anyway, they did have this freedom and a broad idea of music from taking it from different ideas. Death Disco was one of the songs that we did it on Top of the Pops, actually.
Yes.
But so yeah, that was an exciting band to be in, and it was rather upsetting that
Did you do much kind of jamming, as they said in the 60s, did sort of
we
with
did
Wobble?
absolutely none. We did none, which was why eventually I said to John, listen, either you get a new guitar player, which I knew he wouldn't do because Keith actually was the main creative brain behind the band, especially in the studio, or I'm off because I just couldn't stand working with Keith anymore. But we didn't jam at all. Not once did we just play for playing's sake. And that band, if any band should have been doing it, it was them, especially with Wobble and me. We did kind of have a good rapport.
Yes. Oh God, that's such a. And then, sort of, once you walked away from that one, what did you go into? What was the next musical lineup that you were part of?
Oh, my next one was the guy that I'm actually recording with at the moment. A second album we're doing. It's a band called Unhappy Fly. And the man in that band is a guy called, his current name is Zentos, Frey Bentos. He was Jim, and he was the bass player in the Homosexuals. I don't know if you've come across them in your...
I've only seen the name.
Okay, Astral Glamour they were a fantastic band, actually. Again, this was late 70s, yeah?
Right, yes.
Very much based in the squat scene as well. They were an excellent band, but they were splitting up. So I teamed up with Jim, the bass player, and we had a band and did some recording back then. And I've remained friends with him, and we actually brought out an album. Check it out. It's called Unhappy Fly. It's on Spotify.
Yes, it's on Emotional Response Records.
That's right.
That's right. So did you, during that sort of...
That's we recorded 3 years ago, that album. What we did back then came out on singles, and, it was like Jim was always being a total anarchist in that sense. He'd change his name as a recording artist. He'd change the name of the label of the cassettes that he'd bring out or the singles. He was completely, total independent kind of anarchist guy. Brilliant, but so creative, such a creative musician.
Yes. So that took you into the 80s, The Human Fly. And then how long did that one...
Unhappy Fly.
Unhappy. Sorry. And then after that musical adventure...
I think after that, I think it was Basement 5.
The Basement 5 period. This is... And was that a little bit more satisfying?
Not really, no. Well, I love playing again with the bass player, with Leo, and the guitar player who I got on with, but I don't like, slagging people off. But anyway,
no, of course.
Yeah. Again, I didn't get on with one of the members particularly in the band. So we did a wonderful tour actually, because we were supporting Ian Dury and the Blockheads on their rhythm stick tour around England, Wales, and Scotland.
Yes.
So that was just wonderful, playing with a great rock band who had Wilco on guitar as a guest and Don Cherry on trumpet as a guest.
Amazing. And that was, that's sort of the famous kind of post-punk period, really, isn't it? This is kind of...
Yeah.
And does that last into 85?
No, that lasts, I think, 81, 82 when I went, because I managed to get some money from Public Image, from the metal box recording. So I felt publishing for that, and with that money that money I was able to go to Brazil for 9 months with my girlfriend, and that was just fantastic. I went to Brazil because I was always fascinated by Brazilian music, and we ended up, traveling around Brazil for kind of 8 or 9 months.
Blimey. So you'd been 30 then, weren't you? And
81, 82, that's right, 30. Yeah.
30. So how do you then navigate your 30s?
I come back in 82 and get in with Raincoats, recording their third album. I'd been with them right at the start when they needed a drummer because they were friends from the neighbourhood around, Notting Hill. They'd been long-term friends. And so I teamed up with them again in...
Was this the Kitchen Tapes or Move-In?
Well, we did both, yeah, both. Kitchen Tapes was a live album we did in New York, and Moving was the album that, as a vinyl, I mean, there's a long story here, which I'm not going to go into because, it's not a very nice story. But anyway, yeah, then a CD came out leading off some of the songs, but I think that was a publishing.
A publisher, but you were on Rough Trade at this stage, weren't you?
They brought out on the vinyl, yeah, it came out with Rough Trade, yeah.
Yes, and this is kind of the beginning of kind of the indie...
So this is 82, 83.
Yeah. Yes. And did you enjoy playing with the Raincoats?
I love playing with the Raincoats. It was a very free atmosphere, creative atmosphere. Wonderful, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so playing with Gina, the bass player, was a very good old friend of mine.
And were you still feeling passionate about the music world at this stage?
The music world?
Well, just kind of with a lot of bands.
Well, music,
just kind of dealing with, band members, band dynamics, management, just there's a lot goes on before you can be creative. I just wondered, a lot of bands I've interviewed, they have a 5-year narrative. They get together. They have the 12-month period. That's great. They get a single on John Peel, the John Peel Session, the first album. And then the second...
you see, I was maybe fortunate, or maybe that's how the cookie crumbles. I never lasted more than a year with anyone, except for the one I was, you know what I mean? So it was like, I never got to that stage. Or maybe that stage arrived and I moved on.
You packed your bags, hadn't you? You got your drum kits.
Another band. I mean, and also being a drummer, I played with a lot of different people. A lot of them, like Jim, they had no commercial success. So that's where the rub is when you're not getting the commercial success. I mean, it's fine if you haven't got a family or whatever, but when you have children or something like that is when you really do want to have a bit of finances coming in,
And how were you navigating the 80s? I mean, it's quite a bizarre decade, wasn't it? We had Thatcherism, but we had the, Falkland, the miners' crisis, and yes, the miners' strike. And then we had, Greenham Common, things felt very tense around that. Then you had that rise of the yuppie and, the sell of, the Thatcherism sort of period. The right to buy, which is, kind of changed.
Destroyed our co-op, actually. This co-op that I told you we formed. And, suddenly everyone could put a right to buy. Not everyone did, but we didn't, but a lot of people did, yeah.
Yes.
So, how did I navigate it? I was just playing with lots of different people, not with much commercial success. I went back to playing with Tymon.
Yes.
We had a good recording time with... Joe Strummer, who was, a friend of ours. Obviously, by then we'd come back to friendship with him. He paid for a session of recording Tymon's music with Glyn Johns in Glyn Johns' studio.
Brilliant.
So, we did an album down there that's actually, we're looking for someone to bring it out now, actually. It's still there and it's never been released. So I was working with Tymon at this time, and again back with Jim, the guy who I'm now working with again. So this brings us up to mid 80s, and in 85 I bought a shell of a house here in Granada.
Right.
And I spent a couple of years coming out every 6 months to do it up, and we eventually moved out, and I've been here ever since. So.
God, so how do you...
I left London in 88, yeah.
That was the end. You packed your bags and were gone. Yeah. My God, that must have felt strange. So then, were you still able to do much music, or were you just looking at...
Yeah. What? But in Granada, yeah, I've been fortunate in playing with. I started off actually with a Moroccan band, playing the Moroccan band here, and then we formed another, a rock band with friends here, Porcilas Moscas. Again with Joe, he came out to Madrid and helped us in the final mixes of an album we did. Then after that, I met a guy called Tom Lardner, an American from New Jersey, and we brought out a couple of albums over the years. That band is called El Doghouse.
Blimey, you've got a very prolific output here, haven't you? El Doghouse as well. This takes you into the sort of O years, doesn't it? Sort of In Heat and Howl.
That's right. And On Track. On Track's our last one. Is that not there?
No, it's not, I'm afraid.
Oh, that was the last one we brought out a couple of years ago.
Yes. So are you one of those, do you have a live residency somewhere around Granada, or do you?
No, you can't. It's not that big a city. It's like 250,000, so you can't kind of play unless you're doing kind of jazz in a kind of a club or something. No, so you play. You play every kind of 6 months somewhere. But you play. We used to do gigs elsewhere in Andalusia. Well, actually, we used to tour up north in Spain, where rock. There's a bit more interested in rock. In the Basque Country and Madrid. We played Madrid many times. We did national television. And in this band, I was very fortunate because my son, when he was 13, he'd been playing drums since he was a nipper, of course, because having a kit there. But he was also learning guitar. So when he was 13, we needed a bass player in that band, the El Doghouse. So he became our bass player, and until he was 18, we'd tour all over the place. So I'd be with my son, which was a lovely thing to do as a dad, to be able to play rock, tour, go around. So I'd be having to ring up his school saying, "Oh yeah, I'm afraid he's got flu." In fact, just coming out of some dive in northern Spain somewhere. Didn't have that on, but, yeah.
Well, there you go. And then about over 10 years ago, you brought out this book, didn't you, as well, Squat City Rocks?
That's right, yeah.
So when did that idea come about?
Oh, my God, that's... I really can't remember. I think... Oh, that's right. Oh, I remember now. When Joe was still alive, we were going to do get a web page together. So for the band, because we were going to re-release the 101 and stuff, it was Joe and me who sorted out an album.
Yes.
Back in 1980, 81. We called it Andalusia Records, which was our own label. So we brought out all, usable recorded tracks just to have a record of the 101s, as we'd never had an album when we were actually together, just two singles.
Was this the compilation called Elgin Avenue Breakdown?
That's right, yeah.
Right, so that...
Which was on Andalusia Records, which was a vinyl, distributed through Virgin. It was, it's fair enough. It was a reasonable album. So... Excuse me, I must get some water. I've got a real cough here. Dave. Can you excuse me?
Yeah. I'll hit the pause button for a pause.
That was right.
Ah, there you go. Yes, water. Yes, hopefully that's cleared your throat. Yeah, so you put out the compilation.
Elgin Avenue Breakdown on the vinyl, and then later some more live tapes appeared, and we thought maybe we should do a definitive something on CD. So while we were doing that, was actually Joe suddenly died in 2002, but we'd been talking about it the previous year, and I was actually writing the introduction for a web page, and when then he died, and I thought, well, I've started writing this, I'm going to carry on writing. So that's when I started the book, I suppose, in 2003, something like that. And then
Right.
I forgot about it for a bit, and then I came back to it and finished it off in the, I don't know when it came out now, maybe 2014, something
It
like that.
was 2000. Yes, it was kind of an amazing piece of work, actually, isn't it? With you had an illustrator as well. So
Well,
yes,
it was my lady, Esperanza. Yeah.
fantastic. And what was the response? Did it sort of capture a lot of memories, and not just memories, but did a lot of people get in touch to sort of knock
Yeah.
them?
Well, not a lot. I mean, I don't know what a lot is. I mean, it certainly wasn't a bestseller because I tried peddling it around with mainstream publishers, and no one was interested. So I ended up doing it through, and they're not my favorite company, but there was a lot going for it. Was Amazon Publishing.
Yes.
Because then you get, anyone in the world can get it, and I do sell it all over the world. So all they have to do is push a button and get their copy printed.
Without having to pay loads of P&P. It's tricky, isn't it? Did you?
Yeah.
And did you start developing other art works as well? Did you get into painting at this point? And no,
not at all. No, I mean, my wife's a very fine artist, sculptor.
Right.
So we have a lovely relationship. We've been together 50 years now, but maybe that's because we do keep our areas.
So she's the painter and the ceramicist, and you're the musician. So your house, is it sort of divided between your sort of studio and drum kit and her sort of art space?
She has her own studio, and I have my kit up here. Yeah.
Blimey, that's incredible. Yes, well, that must be quite a nice way to sort of spend your adult life. So then bring it up to the last 5 years. What's been your sort of, work and sort of general output during the last, this decade, say?
Well, it was with, I think, the El Dog House. We brought out an album 3 years ago, I suppose. But I've been working with Tymon, as I said. We had this album out last year, and Unhappy Fly came out 3 or 4 years ago, the first album. And since then, because Jim lives in England, I live here, so we just record 2 or 3 songs. He'll come out here, we'll record them here, or I go over there and record. We got loads of recordings actually, which is why I'm going out in April to. We're going to do a final selection, final mixing, and hopefully mastering. So that's what I've been doing since then, playing with different people.
Yes. And with Tymon, he's on Tiny Global. What have you got with Jim? Have you got a label for that particular?
Well, yeah, I think you mentioned the name of it. What was it called?
Well, there was Tiny Global, wasn't there?
Emotional Response.
Oh, Emotional, yes.
With Jim, but I don't know whether we'll do the next album with them. In fact, I'm moving things a bit to see if we can find someone who wants, because nowadays you really have to bring out a vinyl if you want. It's a waste of time, really, a CD. And MP3s just get lost in the ether. So you're talking about, producing vinyl for vinyl. Unless you want boxes and boxes of vinyls under your bed, you need a record company to kind of,
yes,
make it, manufacture it, and hopefully sort out a bit of distribution.
Well, absolutely. I know it's always it's the key, isn't it, really, to these things. I think Bandcamp is amazing, but like you said, there's so much out there. It's almost it isn't solid. It's not really always a solid thing. Whereas, yes, we reminisce about vinyl records, don't we, so much. So have you been? Obviously, you must have a huge body of work. Are you conscious of your kind of archiving and sort of trying to collate and collect all the material that you've done?
Not really. No, I'm not very. I've never been a great collector of, especially of my own stuff. I mean, although for the 101ers I have, and we are, because there's going to be yet another 101ers. So actually, to go back to that, we were talking about the the vinyl that we brought at Elgin Avenue Breakdown in 1981. But then in when Joe died, myself and Joe's widow, Lucinda, we decided to do that album that I'd started with Joe, the compilation, an up-to-date 101. So we brought out a CD with EMI, eventually got EMI interested in it, which was great. They were very good, actually, very helpful and whatever we wanted to do, they let me, I was basically doing it.
Yes.
Do it. And so that was called Elgin Avenue Breakdown Revisited, which is a CD. Now, I'm not sure whether that's still available because we've just signed a deal, the 101ers, with Dark Horse Records. So I don't know if you know who they are.
No.
Dark Horse Records, the label set up by George Harrison to bring out mostly his work, and Ravi Shankar and some other musicians. So they're the guy that runs Dark Horse Records actually has become the mover for Joe Strummer's what do you call it? Body of work.
Right.
And so we've done a deal with them. They're going to bring out a box set. This really has to be the definitive 101ers now.
There's really not much
There's no
more.
more. But I have been going through, loads of tapes, and you can kind of actually nowadays, even though they're pretty, there's some interesting stuff which has come up since then. We have a rehearsal that we did in 101's basement back in early 75 with songs that have never been heard before. So, yeah, it does make it worth doing. And also, if you do a nice box set, which they will, with all the extra, the photos, the material that they can put into it, hopefully they'll do a nice job on it. And so it's worth doing.
Oh God, yes, we love that. I know Cherry Red Records are very good with their archiving and box sets and doing things that's like you said, that will be it. There's no more material in the cupboards and in shoe boxes. They'll kind of get everything there is, which is quite good. When you were in the 101ers, was it Vic Mail? Was he your go-to producer at that stage during some of those recordings?
Not go-to. He came to us and just said, listen, he heard us playing somewhere and said, if you want to record, come up to my studio. That he had a recording studio up in Rickmansworth. It was an 8-track or 4-track, 8-track. And we just recorded, I think, about 6 or 7 songs with him. And yeah, we were quite chuffed because it's the first time we'd ever been in a recording studio, and he'd invited us in. And we did. We got down all of our songs.
Yes.
About 6 songs, I think there were, in an afternoon, one after the other. Bang, bang. And of course, he'd just done Dr. Feelgood's first album. So we knew of him through the Feelgood's first album. And,
yes.
So we were quite, happy.
And he went on to do those classic Motorhead albums as well during the next period. And did you keep in touch with Lemmy much during those kind of that decade and into the 80s, or had your paths?
Unfortunately, only in maybe end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. We used to have our house was in Westbourne, just off Westbourne Grove, and I remember him coming in to a party we had once in our house, but it wasn't a regular.
No,
a regular. Unfortunately, because I always really liked Lemmy. He was a lovely man. Yeah.
Yes, well, I've always had a bit of an obsession with Motorhead, so I'm always curious when people went, "Oh yes, I used to know Lemmy," and it's always nice to hear because everyone always thinks he was, a delightful chap, and it was just a nice thing actually to know that people always said he was a really intelligent chap who, which is very pleasant to be around.
Yeah, exactly. He was that. Yeah.
Well read. He loved his science fiction and, created an amazing body of work. It was it's a shame that their third album, they got rid of Vic at that stage, and it was Fast Eddie producing it, so things started to go wrong. it's just life in the recording studio. Yes, so your next plans are sort of all sort of lots of collaborations, recordings, and getting things done. So by the end of the year, will you have another album out out and about?
Oh, I certainly hope we'll have sorted out the Unhappy Fly second album. Could even be a double because we got enough material for a double. Have to find the label to bring it out, as I was saying.
Yes.
And then we're also working. Tymon Dogg's coming out here because he has a place in Spain as well. So he comes out every now and again, and we work with this band that we have here. It's called Tymon Dogg and the Dacoits. If you
I will have a look at that actually. And when you're doing your archiving with the 101ers, do you work with other members of the band as well, or is it who else?
Usually, I mean, so many people have died. The bass player died. The sound recordist, the sound man, Mickey died. Joe died. Simon died. Another guy. But yes, with Clive, the guitar player, he's the only other one really.
Right. Is he still in the UK?
Yeah, he's down in Hastings. Yeah.
Blimey, he's still doing it. So basically, you two are holding the legacy of the 101ers, aren't you?
Yeah, for the time being. Yeah.
In the time being. And do you have any more plans, any other books or any other projects like that coming out?
No, I don't think so. I think, well, I'm going to be writing something for this box set, but I mean, that's not a book. No, if I write another book, it has to be a novel, I think. I mean, you can only, navel gaze for
so long.
So long.
Did you manage to take photographs of some of those kind of years that you had during the 70s and 80s? Because it's always, fascinating when you see people's pictures during that time, because it does seem like such a different world.
Oh yeah, and well, in the book there are quite a few photos. It's not just drawings. It's there are a lot of photos in there as well.
Fantastic.
In my book, not just of the 101ers kind of going through Pill, I think Basement 5. Yeah, there are a few photos in there. And
did you enjoy the process of doing the book?
Very much so. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did it feel somehow quite releasing? Cathartic, yes. Did it feel?
Not really. I mean, it's a bit of a weird one because there always is an element, to be honest, of justification, I suppose. I suppose in a way I've always felt that, I have to justify myself in terms of certain decisions I've made, like, not joining the Clash, like leaving Pill, and not being as successful maybe as I could have been, as a musician. So all these things are kind of interesting to kind of talk about and grapple with, which I do in the book. It's not as if it's just, this happens and then this happens. I try to have a personal take on all of this.
Yes. It's interesting when you see patterns in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think, oh, that's happened a few times. What is the reason for this? Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. If you were able then, just last question, if you were able to sort of whisper something to your 16-year-old self starting out, is there anything that you would have thought that would have been a good thing to have focused on? That would have been a good thing to have avoided, or any sort of words of wisdom?
Yes, I think so. But which kind of like, do you regret anything? Which is one way of asking that question. And mine would have been only really one thing, which is I think I should have taken more seriously to learn music or learn the piano or learn the guitar to be able to write my own music, which I haven't done. Well, I have. I've written a couple of songs, 2 or 3 songs, but I mean, to have a bit more dominant. And not only that, I have a piano here, but I don't play it. Because I think as a drummer, you're very much reliant on finding the songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fine. I love drumming. That's not the problem. But I mean, I think if you can actually write the songs and then get people you want to play with, and that would have given me maybe more freedom to work in a way that I wanted. So that's one thing. And the other thing possibly would have been to have a serious teacher for the drums, because I was always self-taught. And I think, I'm not so sure about this one so much, but maybe if I'd taken a bit more seriously the study of my instrument, the drums, then it might have opened up more channels. I don't know.
Well, yes, I know quite a lot of people enjoyed having a tutor or some mentor just to sort of, yes, push them a little bit or sort of give them new ideas. It's always. Were there any other drummers that you particularly liked at that stage? I know it's a bit of a naff question, really, but was any.
Well, yeah, but they were all, jazz drummers, because jazz drummers are the guys who really play the drums. Art Blakey, who I saw 3 or 4 times in Ronnie Scott's.
Yes.
Any great jazz drummer just blows my mind. You see a great drummer playing. I love it. And there's so many drummers. Back then when I was starting, Al Jackson was the drummer with, all of the Otis Redding recordings and the Bar Kit. And he was a drummer that I really liked his style. It was very simple. It was rock, soul music.
It's interesting. Yes, because I did an interview with dear old Hunt Sells, who was in Iggy Pop's band and then Tin Machine, but he just came from a very jazz background. That was his kind of love of music. It was, Art Blakey. That was one of the names he mentioned as well as, just any jazz drummer, basically, from that 40s and 50s.
Well, exactly. The bebop drummers of 40s, 50s, they were just amazing, and the recordings that, the people that used to play with.
Yes. One of the great, not mysteries, but I know people often talk about that kind of John Bonham drumming. Was that a particular style that you also appreciated, people like him, rather than...
I did appreciate it, of course I do. He was a great drummer, I didn't like the music so much. Okay, Led Zeppelin, before I was playing music, I used to listen to their album. But it's, he was a really great drummer. Quite honestly, David, almost any drummer I see, there's going to be something that I like. When I see a drummer, even in a little band around the corner, I'll be interested in seeing what they're doing and enjoying what they're doing, because it's always slightly different, and people do it their own way, and it doesn't have to be technically brilliant. It's just, everyone has their own personality.
Yes, because I've done quite a few interviews with drummers, and they've often struggled in some of those periods, like the late 80s, 90s, with the click track. Did you?
God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was a load of bullshit, load of bollocks. Hated it. I've done it. I used to record with it, but not only that, not so much the click tracks, but people wanting to use electronic drums because they could, or they'd write their drum pattern on a electric drum, on a drum pad or a thing.
Yes.
No, I want it like this. Just play this. Oh, fuck off. Use your machine if that's what you want.
Right. Yes.
That was my kind of.
It's been. Yeah, I've had a few drummers who, I don't know, just went into addiction problems and got thrown out of the band because they got into the studio with a particular producer who just gave them such a lot of grief that it was a bit like they just kicked the drummer out because they could get some slick drummer in, and they made that decision as a band and broke that musician's heart, really. It's
imagine that happened. It didn't happen to me, maybe because I wasn't in that situation, but yeah, they reached a point. And also in the late 80s, I came out here, which is when I think, the electronic side of percussion really came into popular music, Okay, it had started mid 80s, but no, early 80s actually. But
yes. There was the sort of Trevor Horn production sound,
yeah.
and that, if you want to hit a chart success, you're going to have a particular drum sound, and there's the gated reverb period, which was horribly it sounds so dated now. And then in the 90s, you had this kind of heavy rock rap sound as well, and again the drum was it wasn't very organic. It felt very I don't know, just like machines, really.
Treated, very machine, machine rhythm. I mean, it's not, I like, jungle music. I don't even mind going to a discotheque, so long as they don't play it all night. I'll be happily listen to a couple of tracks and enjoy it. I mean, it's rhythmically interesting. But for me, give me James Brown's Drummer any day.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
This is true. Look, Richard, thank you ever so much for your time. This has been amazing. And yes, if you want, I can always send you the link to this, and then you can put it on your.
Oh, do yeah.
You put it. But yes,
hear all the rubbish I've been talking.
Yes, and I'll because that guy from Tiny Global, he sent me a whole box of stuff, and it's strange that, and there's packets of stuff, and I must admit there must be something from your sort of Tymon Dogg. I keep thinking I've seen one, so I'm sort of
it's got 5 palm trees on the front. We recorded some of it. Did you know the guy called Youth? Do you know?
Yes, dear old Youth. He does a lot of work now with Alan McGee, doesn't he?
That's right. He does. Well, Youth's got a studio just down the road from here in Granada, and we recorded a lot of this album with. Well, actually, he plays on one of the tracks, Youth.
Right.
Because he's in Granada, when he's not in his studio in Wandsworth.
Yes, he seems to be spending a lot of time down there at the moment. So I know. So it's quite. It sounds like you've got quite a nice community of people. There was another guy called something Meat. He's got a terrible name for a band, but I think he's in Granada as well.
Sorry, what's his name? Sorry.
Oh, it's something got the word meat in it.
Meatloaf?
No, not Meatloaf. There was I have to have a look. Musician with a name, but I'm sure that he was in that area. Musician from Liverpool who was. I'll just see if I can find it quickly. Because I remember.
Not Tymon Dogg, obviously. Yeah.
No, I'm not going to. Oh, when I sort of locate this, because I know when I did the interview, he was like, "Oh, look at this. Why wouldn't you want to move out here?" And it was somewhere a bit like that, your area actually. So, God, I can't believe I haven't got nothing by Tymon Dogg here. Oh, I don't know. It's a confusing world. Anyway, I know
in Spotify you can see it if you use Spotify.
I do. I have to say, I confess that's in, but it's quite useful, isn't it?
It's got most things there.
Yeah, it's got most things, which is good and bad. But anyway, look, I will let you get on. But thank you ever so much for your time, and I'm really excited about all your future projects. Actually, it's always good to hear what people are up to. Actually, everyone's doing something. I did an interview last night with Clive Langer, who was, in deaf school from Liverpool. He went to Liverpool.
I think we played with them, Deaf School, back in 76, 75.
Probably in Liverpool. Oh, no, or London.
No, it was in London.
Yeah. So, but then he became with Alan Winstanley, the go-to producers of the 80s and a bit 90s. Did Elvis Costello and Madness and Teardrop Explodes. But he's just releasing an album next month as well with his band. So everyone's doing it. He just hit 70 as well. So, yes, it's all go, isn't it?
Hopefully, yeah.
It's good. But look, thank you ever so much, Richard, and I'll let you rock on and take care and have a lovely day or night. Bye.
Bye then. All the best.
Bye. I know, it's rock and roll all the way. I love those endings. Anyway, that was me, Rich, in conversation with Richard Dudanski, I do believe, talking about his life in music. This has been the C86 show. If you want to contact me, you can. On all the social media platform sites, just do 86 Show David Eastaugh. And also, all these fascinating interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, and I think various other ones. You'll find them if you want to. There's over 1,000, so I have been busy. Anyway, have a great week. Stay safe.